Hey, this is Walter Jones.
This is Austin St. John.
And you're listening to
Ranger Danger.
Go, go, Ranger Danger! Matt and Michael's Ranger Danger!
Welcome once again to the Ranger Danger Boom Room. This is the podcast where we talk about the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comics coming from Boom Studios. We'll be talking about issue number 6 of the main series this time. And with us is, as always, is comics extraordinaire and Ranger Danger Boom Room co-host, Mr. Kyle Higgins. Welcome back, Kyle.
Hey guys, good to be here. How has everyone been?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I had my wisdom teeth out, but I'm recovered from that.
You did.
Nice.
You had invasive surgery.
So now I have no wisdom anymore, but that's okay because
and less teeth.
Yes, they didn't let me keep them. It was a real bummer.
Did you want to keep them?
A little. I wanted to make them into a necklace.
Yeah, that's weird. You're fired. Can I do that?
Okay. How have you been, Kyle?
I'm okay. It's an interesting time right now. I'm like recording this at a friend's place because I'm currently homeless. So it's been it's been an interesting month since we last spoke. So think I'm gonna do some traveling.
That sounds good.
You know, going through a breakup at the moment, which is never fun, and it's even less fun when it's out of nowhere and you live together.
Yeah.
Or had just started living together. So it's like, okay, guess I'm getting another moving truck.
And moving is just the worst. Like, it doesn't compare to a breakup in any way, but it certainly compounds the problem because it's such a shitty experience.
Oh, so. Yeah. I think when we were recording the podcast for issue 4, it was like I think we talked about that. Like, I was sitting in my bedroom in my apartment that I'd had for like 8 years, and I was like in the process of moving out.
Yep.
And I remembered recording the podcast that day because I kept looking around and everything going, I have so much stuff to pack. And then a short, couple months later, right back to it. So
yeah, that's no fun. But the Power Rangers series seems to be doing very well, which it's exciting to see it go from strength to strength.
Yeah, we should mention, so since we last spoke to you, the annual came out.
Yep.
That was exciting. You had a story in that with Rodriguez.
Yeah, that one. I kind of teased that for a while to you guys, but I was really excited. We were both very proud of how it turned out. Very. I don't know. It was a weird little story for me to write, and I wrote it while on what was supposed to be a vacation in Florida. In hindsight, I wish I would have just knocked it out before or pushed it off till after, because it like really stressed me out on the trip, like trying to figure out this little story for Rod. But I think it turned out great, and it's his first non, creator-owned work.
Oh, really?
And yeah. The only other books he's done were ones that I wrote for Image, our Cowl series. So
yeah, that's crazy to me because it looks so good.
It's just I'm very excited to see what you guys do in Hadrian's Wall, which we should mention is out next week. No, this week.
It'll be Wednesday, September 14th. Yeah.
Yes, so that'll be this week by the time that.
Yeah.
Are you excited?
Yeah, it's been done for so long. The first half of the series has been done for so long that I'm just kind of like, I'm excited for it to finally come out. Yeah. Our sales numbers are a bit soft, but at the same time, I think once word of mouth kind of kicks in and people actually check out the book, I think it's going to pick up. It's a good one. So yeah, we're all pumped that it's actually being in people's hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, listeners, if you happen to be going to the shops this week to maybe get the first Power Rangers trade, which is also out, pick up the first issue of Hadrian's Wall while you're there. Come on.
Yeah,
please do. It's a sci-fi noir. It's a murder mystery on a spaceship done in kind of a retro 80s style. So, it's cool. It's a bit different from Power Rangers, but very cool.
Yeah, if that doesn't appeal to you, I don't know
why
what
you listening to our podcast. Yeah. All right, I think
so
issue 6. Yeah.
Six.
All right, let's get to it.
So,
You please, Matt, go first.
oh yeah, sure. I was just going to say, overall, I think it seems like the most self-contained issue so far we've had, just in that it seems to sort of, outside of a bit of framing, really exist around one major and very intense sequence. I think it's interesting to hit this one. Like, I guess the pacing of the series, because we had a bit of a break recently, and then to hit this one that's just like all cannons blazing was very fun. Did you have anything you want to say overall about this one before we jumped into the nitty-gritty?
No, I mean, I think the big thing for me is that it's, we're kind of starting to hit our stride, like me and Henry together, and this was the first issue. Well, actually, issue 5 was really the first issue where I started to feel like, okay, like it's work, and I can kind of use the throttle a little bit. And this issue in particular, like I wasn't adding a ton of sound effects in. I was just letting things play, and it breathes a bit more.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a smoother reading experience. And I think Henry and I, are very much on the same page in this issue, and I think it shows. So yeah, definitely really proud of this.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll go page by page.
Yeah.
Starting off, we
Sure.
see a brief flash of the aftermath of the attack in San Francisco. And it's immediately a bit jarring for Power Rangers to see consequences of something. Yeah. But it certainly, I think, immediately helps you understand the stakes of the world going into what is a very dramatic sequence of events. And I think it helps set up that feeling that, unlike, a traditional episode of the TV show, things that happen will have consequences, and it sort of primes you for that. That's cool.
Yeah, well, that's one of those like really like tricky kind of tightropes to walk, because the second that you start taking it even a little bit more seriously than the show did, as far as like stakes and consequences, you're grounding it, and then by grounding it, you're opening, a can of worms in some ways. Like, I still don't know how the Zords get from point A to point B, stuff like that.
Yep.
And so you just have to be careful that you don't ground it so much that it takes the escapism out of the story.
Absolutely. Also on this page is Tommy's mother, who wears green and white, which I love. I don't know if that was
does
in the
she?
script. Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't know that wasn't in the script. That's a Matt Herms choice.
That's awesome.
Very nice, Matt.
I
Very
love
nice.
the thought that all of the Power Rangers parents also coincidentally wear the right colours
Yeah.
just to keep them all straight. If they were at like a parent-teacher conference, you'd know straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
They
nice.
just notice that their kids they are wearing all of one colour a lot, and they just want to get really supportive.
Yeah. You want to connect with your teenage kids any way you can.
Wear the same colours as them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess, Kyle, I had some questions about where we left off, not in the previous issue, but in issue 4. It would have been a very straightforward issue to, just pick up there again. And we do, but we do that on page 3 rather than on page 1. And so this sequence of, hey, it's Tommy's mum. Tommy's mum discovers that Tommy's not home. I was interested in, the decision to put this in the issue at all, but also to put it, right here as almost a cold open. Yeah.
Well, that's just kind of a technique that I like doing. It's an opportunity to open up the world a little bit and open up the story. It's just more of a gut feel kind of thing. Like structurally, you're right. We could have opened just with the Black Dragon standing there, and also that a ton of that's been done a ton before. And it works. It would be totally fine.
Yeah.
I just felt especially since we had the interlude issue, issue 5, that it was a nice opportunity to plant a subplot seed at the top of issue 6, because there's nowhere else in the issue that it would make sense to put that in.
Yep, absolutely.
Structurally, once we get going and they retreat and then they go in the pocket dimension and Billy gets taken, everything else from there, it's if we were to and then Rita moves into their home and if we were to put a scene of Mom realizing Tommy's gone, it would just kill the momentum.
Absolutely, yeah.
But up front, it feels fine because it's a little like quiet little kind of character moment that then turns on its head. Where you're like, where is he?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's more of just a gut feel thing.
Sure.
Absolutely. There's a little bit of character stuff in Tommy's bedroom. We see that he's definitely into bands, like quite specifically. Was that a choice by you in the script, or is that something added by Hendry?
No, that was a Hendry thing, actually. What did I... Now I'm trying to remember what I put in the script. I don't know that I was that specific in the script about what his room was like. Sometimes I have like very specific ideas for that stuff, but no, this was all Hendry. He brought a lot to the table on this one.
Yeah, awesome.
Speaking of Hendry bringing a lot to the table, you finally got the splash page you've been waiting for in page 3, and that's just an amazing picture.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not much else to say.
Oh yeah,
about
the
it,
Rangers
awesome.
squaring off. Yeah.
Like the Rangers against the backdrop of the destroyed command center with the silhouetted black dragon. It's just, yeah.
Good shot.
It's a really exciting page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, Hendry knocked it out of the park for sure.
Yeah. Then on the next page, we get to see the Rangers politely declining the offer of the Black Dragon to stand down, specifically citing the fact that the Black Dragon just took out their home. And I thought that was a cool beat because, like, the command center, I don't think it has ever been referred to as their home within the realms of the show, but it absolutely is. It's the heart of the Power Rangers. So that was cool.
Yeah. So I guess
Yeah.
what follows is, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in more detail, but the next kind of 8 or 9 pages are one big fight scene. What's the biggest challenge in writing kind of that big long burst of action?
Well, it's a choreography nightmare.
Sure.
Because when it's one villain and you have 6 Rangers trying to fight him, tracking where each Ranger is and getting one out of the picture at a time so that you can focus on another Ranger, but then like it's a lot to try to manage. I just did another one of these in the issue I finished yesterday, and it's not really working yet. It's close. It's not really working yet, but they're just really tough because you want each Ranger to fight in a style that is unique or takes advantage of their weapons or their unique weapon or skills. Mm-hmm. And then that you're juggling that with a villain that needs to be able to incapacitate them in different ways and turn things on their heads. And it's just tough. It's just a lot. Like I said, it's a lot to juggle. So
I'd like to imagine, and you don't have to confirm or deny, that it's a process that involves a bunch of Power Rangers action figures and you making sound effect noises in your own head.
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Fair enough. So I guess this is also the first hint that we've got of what the Black Dragon can do and who he is in as much as like a personality. Let's talk about this disruption of the Power Rangers' powers ability and how it plays out on the page. Is that something that was always something he was going to be able to do, or did it come to you as you were working it out?
No, it was always something that I had in mind, and I pitched it to Daphne and Alex, my editors, as like an effect that he does that would treat the Rangers' powers and their costumes like the symbiote, the Venom symbiote, that like on Eddie Brock, like whenever it was blasted with Sonics, the symbiote would like recoil. Yep. And so it would look like Venom, like his skin was like peeling off himself, And I just thought it would be a really cool tactic and technique for the Black Dragon to be able to employ, like this kind of like phase, like disruption of the Ranger's powers in a way that like their suits are actually pulling away from their skin, you know, and it would be like mega painful because those suits are actually, you know, I would imagine they're tied to the Morphin Grid, and the Rangers are then tied to the Morphin Grid, so it's all very. I don't want to say the suits are organic material. It's not like that, but there is a connection between them and the suits that they're in, you know?
Absolutely. And I think what this has a really cool benefit in that it helps the Rangers, their powers in their suits, feel like more than just putting on a suit of armor. Whereas in the show, it's not ever really clear what the powers of the Power Rangers are really and sort of what the suits do, if anything. But this, even though it's not terribly specific, you get to that understanding that the suits are tied to the powers in a very specific and tangible way. That's really cool.
And I mean, I think we have to shout out to Hendry and I guess Matt, who's also doing some work. It looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
There's like, if you look closely at this panel on, I think it's page 5, where the suit's peeling away from Kim, and like on one of her shoulders, you can just see her jacket, and on the other shoulder is the suit. And you can't really see where the line is, but there's a
similar touch like that in the next panel in the bottom left-hand corner, where you can see part of Tommy's helmet being peeled away and his hair flowing free from that part of the helmet, but being contained by where the helmet is. It's it's just really cool. Looks real good.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go.
It's about the power weapons, Kyle. Those are something that they were in the show for a bit, and then more or less as soon as the show hit season 2, they just vanished. But they've always, you know, they feel like an iconic part of the Rangers' arsenal. Is that, like, do you think about those as something that differentiates the Rangers and you're trying to get a use of them in where possible? Or is it just a tool that they've got?
That's a good question. I think it's kind of both because, I feel like they have access to these weapons that are specific, and each one is very unique, and that helps to differentiate each ranger while when they're fighting, and especially someone like Kim, who is like, you know, she's the long range kind of sniper attack, and the bow and arrow, you know, that just. Especially in this fight, felt like a really good tactic for her to employ, and I don't know. I've always just kind of liked the weapons because otherwise they're just kind of fighting hand to hand, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they could use their blade blasters as well, but I've just kind of always liked them.
Yeah, I like the way that the power weapons do differentiate them in this fight. As you said, Kim obviously has that long range capability. But even the difference between Jason and Zach, Jason's got the sword and seems better at being able to sort of hold his ground with it. But then Zach seems to be able to sort of come in and land a heavy hit, but then isn't necessarily able to sort of hold his own as much as Jason does.
Right.
It's, real cool. So as they're fighting, we do get a bit of a glimpse into the Black Dragon's personality. And obviously it's sort of... we only have like the smallest of glimpses at the moment, but he talks about Tommy in a very interesting way, as if he seems to know who Tommy is. How much did you have to sort of consider what to give away in this moment and what to hold back, and what was the decision process there?
Well, I think there is a specific. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a connection between the Black Dragon and Tommy, but there is something there that you are keying on something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is called the Black Dragon, right? So, it's a fine line, for sure. Like it's something. It was more that I wanted to provide a hint. I wanted to provide a tease, in that moment where you go like, oh, there's something else going on here, but not really much more than that in the first issue.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. So eventually, basically, it's Trini who makes the call that they need to retreat and regroup. Was there any kind of consideration about, you know, this is issue 6 of the comic, the Power Rangers kind of won that fight in San Francisco, but other than that, they've really been on the back foot a lot. Was there any kind of consideration about, are we showing them losing too much? Or is it just that, you have to show them losing a bit so that when they eventually come back from it, there's the feeling of, earning that success?
Yeah, I like putting characters through the ringer, like I also, when you meet a villain for the first time, like if they defeat the villain, like I don't think the stakes feel as high.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of tees up. Well, actually, no, I don't want to jump ahead. I was going to say, like, them retreating opens up some story avenues that we see a few pages later, with regards to Rita. So, yeah, there wasn't really any resistance to like showing the Rangers losing. I mean, like I just think it's just kind of it's just storytelling,
Yeah, sure.
So, just as they're trying to escape, they're about to teleport off, but the Black Dragon manages to snag Billy just before the rest of the Rangers get away.
Yep.
So, with jumping a little bit ahead, I did notice that in one of our Twitter questions, one of our readers asked, was that ever going to be anyone other than Billy, or is it always going to be Billy, and this is serving sort of a specific importance for Billy in the story?
Yeah, it was always going to be Billy.
Yep.
All right, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I messaged Matt during the week. I spent a couple of days laid up at home, and I basically spent the whole time having some really surprisingly strong feelings about Billy as a character. And so I'm really interested to see kind of what happens now that he's separated from that group. That's, yeah.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah. So, back to the pocket dimension. And as we see, it's starting to fall apart without Zordon, which is a really interesting concept. Were you planning on using the pocket dimension in this way when you first introduced it a few issues ago?
No, I wasn't. I introduced it in issue 1 as kind of a training ground for them, and it's kind of like our danger room. But I knew I wanted to have a different spin on it. It couldn't just be, a hologram danger room kind of thing. And so then it became this question of like, well, if it's like a weird like little pocket dimension where like material can be like matter can be like rewarped and things like that, then when I wanted to give them an escape hatch, it made sense to bring them to the pocket dimension, and I just felt like it amped the tension if that matter is no longer it's not as cohesive anymore without Zordon. And like I told Hendry, like I really wanted this idea of like the actually this was a thing that I talked about with my now ex-girlfriend, where I remember riding in the car, or we were in the car together, and I was like, I'm trying to figure out a way visually to make the pocket dimension like falling apart kind of feel different, kind of cool. And she's a production designer, and she was like, well, could the buildings be dripping? Like, could like the outer skins of the buildings and everything be kind of like falling off and falling apart? And we just kind of like riffed on that for a few minutes, and like I liked this idea, like as the story goes further, like all of the color and everything is like running off the buildings, and it's like pooling on the ground. So it's this like weird like fucked up like 3D model style where like like the skins come off and like they end up getting like maps to weird shit and everything. And it would just start to feel like a David Lynch episode of Power Rangers or something. And so I don't know if we're doing that anymore, because I don't think, looking at this, I don't think it really translated when Hendry. I think what Hendry came up with is awesome. But yeah, that was the genesis behind it.
It certainly looks unsettling, even if it isn't exactly what you described.
Yeah, I think the like just the white gaps that feel like missing bits. It definitely feels like a place that they have a limited amount of time in. That they're not going to be able to hold up in here forever. So they're going to have to make some moves pretty soon, which is an exciting little bit of tension. I have a production question about, I think it's page 13. It's the page where the Rangers first arrive in the pocket dimension. So when they get there, they've got their helmets on. By the bottom row of panels, the helmets are off, and they stay off for the rest of the issue so that the Rangers can emote and talk with them off.
Right.
Is that something that you're specifying, like, at this point the Rangers have their helmets off? Or
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, I always specify that in the script, yeah.
Okay, that answers that question for me.
Yeah, because I'm very again, it's a choreography thing. Like I'm always tracking where everything is, and I can't imagine doing that scene in the Pocket Dimension without or with the Rangers keeping their helmets on.
Yes.
Yeah.
But being able to take them off at will, I think, is definitely an important decision there. Okay, so moving on to a bit further into the Pocket Dimension scene, we see them able to get I guess what's like a security camera view, basically, of what's going on at the command center with putties invading it, which is terrifying.
Isn't that cool? I love that.
Yeah, I think it absolutely deserves being almost half the page in that panel, despite being dialogless. That is a cool touch. So, is that something that was in the script originally? Did you feel that they needed to be able to see what was happening to them, even though they weren't there?
Yeah, I did. And look, I mean, Power Rangers has always kind of played a bit fast and loose with like where these cameras are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you're seeing stuff in orbs, you're seeing stuff in hologram. You know, it's like where is the camera that's filming this? Like
what is looking at what?
Yeah, and it's gotten a little dicey actually because there have been a couple times where it's like Scorpina in the Dragon Zord, for example. I was like, do the Rangers know she's in the Dragon Zord? She locked them out. Like that's the plot point. Like they're locked out. So can they see inside it? I was having trouble tracking it, you know. And then there was other stuff where it's like they can't see inside Rita's moon base, and she can't see into the command center. But when she takes over the command center, can they now no longer see in the command center? Like, how does that work? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are all these like little questions and like kind of logic. I don't want to say holes, but like things we like to figure out. And yeah, so that's it was something that it was an idea that I had while I was writing this issue, actually, which was that she takes over the command center. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't something that was originally in my outline. It was something that I kind of audibled on, and I like pitched it while I was writing the issue because I thought it was such a cool, different direction. Yeah. And it came out of honestly, I don't know that I would have come up with it had I not seen Hendry's art for issue 4, because just how kind of half destroyed the command center was in issue 4, I felt like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. Like the place, if the fight takes place there and the Rangers need to run, they're leaving this place that is both their home, but also now it's a husk.
Yes.
You know, like that's some place that Rita could symbolically move into. And it just opens things up in a really interesting way. So,
yeah, I'm excited and also a little terrified to see what happens next there, because it's a thing that just doesn't happen in the show, you know.
Yeah,
and so
right.
That's
yeah, because I think in the show their respective bases are the only places of sort of privacy and safety for both sides. Because outside of that, as I guess you mentioned before, each side can see everything that happens everywhere except for in those two places. So to have one of the, like their only place of sanctuary where they're not viewed all the time taken away is just, it's unsettling. So next up we have
for sure.
We have a standoff of sorts between Tommy and Zach. It's interesting to see them, but both of their emotions come to a head because they've been through kind of weirdly similar things, I guess, that now that we know what's been going on with Zach. Was this always planned as a place where that would come to a head? And will this conflict be ongoing, or do we feel like it's sort of resolved for the moment?
I think it's definitely resolved for the moment. However, the talking about the issues and kind of the resolution of like, hey, are we going to be cool? You know, like that is that's not here yet. I mean, it's very much like, let's put a pin in this, you know?
Yes.
And it's let's put a pin in this by way of maybe my favorite line in the book so far, which is Kim telling them if they, like I spend a page just like with them like getting like more and more agitated at each other and like getting closer to each other and like really getting in each other's faces, and then you turn the page and Kim like is in between them and she's like, for the love of God, stop, someone's gonna slip on the testosterone and break their neck, you know, like and that kind of diffuses things, you know.
I should say one of our Twitter questions was listener Kelsey calling that out as her favorite line in comic books maybe ever, so it's you're not the only fan of it.
Well, I appreciate that, Kelsey.
Yeah, I see that actually, this panel specifically pop up on Tumblr and Twitter and a few places. I think, yeah, Kelsey's not alone in loving that particular panel. I
think, for me, the thing that's interesting is Kim getting to do that. And I mean, Kim was probably one of the best realized characters on the show, not necessarily because of the writing, but because Amy Jo Johnson was one of the show's strongest actors. And I think even then, she never got to do anything like this, but it still feels like a Kim moment. And it's, I keep enjoying what you're doing with this book, Kyle. I like there being good... I should say, we finished Mighty Morphin Power Rangers like last week or the week before for the podcast. So we've now seen all of it, and I can comfortably say that this is my favourite story that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has ever had.
Yes, yeah,
it's.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice to hear. It's really nice for you guys to say that too, not just because I'm on the podcast.
It is genuinely not just because you are on the podcast. The fact that you're on the podcast does help a lot, though. So don't go away now that I've said that.
So we go from like a very funny but and also cool moment to switching to the next scene where we see one of the more horrific visuals I've ever seen, which is Alpha 5's decapitated head being stepped over by Rita Repulsa. So when you're putting these things to paper, where's your this is too far line, and how close is this to the line?
I don't have one. As evidenced by what you're going to see next issue. No, I don't know. It's a taste thing. I think that robots can always be rebuilt, you know? So I'm always in the camp, like, let's fucking blow them up. Like, you know, like we can always find an out. So I don't know. It's well, I'll tell you originally what that panel was. Originally, it was Billy's arm and then Alpha's cracked face.
Right.
So it mirrored almost exactly the opening of issue 0.
Yep.
But instead of Trini, it was Alpha.
Yeah.
And as I was finagling the choreography of all this, and it just didn't make sense to have Billy there. And you'll see where he is late. Like, that becomes a big plot point. But it just felt like having, like, I just couldn't make it work. Especially because the Rangers are immediately like, we have to save Billy. And if he's there, then it's like, are we going to go back to where we just came from? And from a plotting standpoint, like, it just felt like a hat on a hat, you know?
Yes.
It just didn't feel right. And I kept kind of really like bumping up against it. And so I finally was like, okay, Billy's not there, and we'll just turn it into an alpha homage to the opening of issue 0.
When you're writing a page like that, which is, you know, very obviously a homage to something at previous page that you guys had put together, does your script just say, hey, Henry, just copy paste issue 0, page 1, but put this guy there?
Yeah, I mean, more or less. I mean, I basically say, like, I'll say, like, a note at the top of the page. I'll be like, hey, so this is actually going to be a callback to issue 0, page 1, I'd like to do it with the same layout, but instead of Billy, it'll be Alpha, and then I'll note the panels.
Yep.
Like I'll actually, like, I think I actually copied and pasted the script from issue 0, page 1 into here, and then changed who it was. And yeah, Hendry got it. I mean, nailed it. So
Yeah.
You feel free to answer this question with no, there are too many spoilers in the answer. But obviously, the thing from issue 0, page 1 was a vision that Tommy was having. And we also saw Tommy have a vision of like the command center be attacked and destroyed. And now we're seeing kind of the Black Dragon definitely has represented some sort of connection with Tommy emotionally at least, if not physically. Should we be expecting like Tommy's visions to be a thing that comes back? Is he having those visions related to what's going on here? Or is it just that you're like suggesting things that might happen that are also things that you end up doing?
Well, look, I'll say this, like, I don't ever want to cut myself off from story possibilities and story potential. The idea that, like, Tommy is, precog of the future is not really a thing that, like, I have plans for.
Sure.
Having said that, when you're getting into like areas of like, we're not really dealing with science, we're kind of dealing with magic here, as far as like the Green Ranger powers and like the remnants of being under Rita's mind control. And I mean, look, we still haven't I haven't fully said whether it's just like an echo that's been in Tommy's head. Like, that kind of story point has been kind of put on, I don't want to say put on hold, but, we kind of tied it up at the end of issue 4 when Tommy kind of got some confidence, but that's not to say that that's over.
Yeah. Sure.
And so as far as Tommy's connection to the dragon powers and what those visions kind of, or hallucinations are, and whether they can come true or not, like in different ways, like I kind of like leaving that a little ambiguous.
Sure.
I think there is something kind of nice to like what ends up happening is kind of ambiguously connected to what he saw, like without it being a thing where he's like, I had a vision, so this means it's going to happen. Like I think it's more like a thematic connection than anything.
Sure.
So that's what I would say about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we see Rita arrive and be very pleasantly surprised by how things went, which I can understand for someone whose plots have failed 150 times consecutively.
Yeah, I was gonna say Rita's not used to shit working out.
Yeah. I imagine she's not sure how to handle that sort of situation.
Yeah.
The Black Dragon, however, seemed very calm and in control and unsurprised by his success, which is all the more terrifying, I think. And then we see why, I guess, he's got that level of confidence is because he has his hands on Billy's Morpher and the Power Coin. Then what he does with it is even more terrifying. He connects it to the morphing grid and then sort of uses his power through it. Was this always the sort of plan for why one of the Rangers were taken, and that sort of, when you're talking about the power of the Black Dragon to strip away their powers, was this the end point from the beginning?
It's not an end point, but yes, this was always planned. This was always where the Black Dragon story was headed. Mm-hmm. And there are reasons for that.
I'm sure there are. I don't doubt it at all. So we see the effects of that when we're back in the pocket dimension. The Rangers are talking about how they're not even sure if Alpha survived or where Zordon is or if Zordon is alive, all of which is terrifying, but not as much as what happens, which is that all 5 of the Rangers... No. 4 of the 5 Rangers had their powers stripped from them, leaving Tommy there, the only one with powers, and the rest of them reverted to their civilian clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a cliffhanger.
Isn't that a situation?
That is a situation, absolutely. So, I guess Tommy's not affected because his powers come from a slightly different place?
Yeah, his powers are... if I understand it correctly, his powers are... Originally, I thought his powers weren't part of the Morphin Grid, and then it's been explained to me that they are, but he accesses the Morphin Grid in a different way than the Rangers do.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of the dragon coin and that Rita basically created the access point. Like, it's like if you think the Morphin Grid is the internet and like Rita's Time Warner, on his Comcast, I don't know if that actually translates in Australia, but like
we know enough
service providers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like Time Warner and Comcast both fucking suck in the U.S. So I don't know that it is actually an apt analogy because it's like Rita's basically Comcast and Time Warner. But you know what it is? Zordon's Google Fiber. And
there you go.
Rita's Time Warner.
Absolutely.
But your guys' internet isn't very good.
No, it's the worst.
Either actually.
Terrible.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
So is that ever going to get better? Why is it so bad?
Because there's like none of us, and we all live around the edges of a giant country. It's actually surprisingly mostly a logistics issue rather than like companies being terrible.
Yeah. Although we have had government plans to fix that situation comprehensively with the fiber network that were ultimately
ruined by politics. Yeah. Look, it's not. It's not entirely logistics. I guess I have one more question about the morphing grid before we wrap up the issue. How worried are you about like show accuracy in that respect? I know what I would imagine the answer to be, but like
what would you imagine the answer to be?
I would imagine that the answer is whatever makes a more interesting story is better than something that some idiot wrote on a TV show 20 years ago. Especially because
that's a. I'm not going to say it that way, but but that's basically that's the camp I fall into. Yeah.
So do you?
Yeah, I don't know. The show accuracy is not as important to me as it is as is it working for our story? Like continuity is kind of the same thing in comics, not necessarily for like Power Rangers, but like continuity is only important if it's in service of the story. Like you shouldn't. I don't know. It's a slippery slope. So I feel the same way about kind of like stuff like the Morphin Grid and how it works. And it's like, is it show accurate? It's like, well, is it show accurate enough? Is it accurate enough for our...
I think the benefit of that with Power Rangers is that you can never be less respectful of the show's continuity than the show was. Where the answers to these questions
loose with it, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's 2 episodes in a row where they call Tor different names. Like there's like
oh really?
There's 6 different things called the Power Sword. It's just insane.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. And
there you go.
I guess that brings us to the end of this issue.
Yeah. Do you see this as the start of the next arc, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like for example, like the way it'll be collected in trade paperback, it'll be issues 5 through 8, I believe. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is kind of like it's tough because it's arc 2, but it's really one kind of big story arc. Like the first 11 or 12 issues are kind of one big story.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the Green Ranger year 1. So this is like arc 2 of 3 within Green Ranger Year 1, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of
So-
sense. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, Kyle, I guess the next thing to come out will be issue 7. Is there anything you'd like to
Yeah.
tease to our listeners, maybe?
It's got my favorite action scene so far. It's also got it's got my kind of favorite, like, well, they never could have done that in the show moment as well, that involves the Dragon Zord. So there's that. What else? What else are we doing in that? Oh, well, yeah. There's a great bit with some putties that I am about and very happy that I got to do. It was like one of the first things I pitched for the issue. And to their credit, they also thought it was, Saban and Boom thought it was really cool, and we made it work. So I'm excited. It's a small little thing, but I think it'll get out. So
Yeah, I think if I was your editors, what I'd perhaps look forward to most is what is Kyle going to do with putties this week? Because
it's really, that's really become kind of my go-to thing. Is like, how can I mutilate some putties in an interesting new way? That's kind of my go-to move.
Yeah, well, putties are there to be molded, so.
Exactly.
All right, so just to close out, Kyle, we do have some questions from Twitter and Facebook for you, so I thought we'd run through those a little quickly. We mentioned Kelsey's question about that line, but I want to bring it up again, that someone's going to slip on the testosterone line. Everybody loves it. Just thought we should let you know.
My ego knows no bounds, so please, you must continue to feed it.
Randy asked if there's any chance we would see a pre-time warp wizard Zordon. And I guess, obviously, any kind of that sort of stuff is big spoilers, I'd imagine, of what you're... But I guess we could go kind of more generally. Do you have any plans to visit the past of the world?
I don't really right now. I've always kind of said, like, I don't like doing stories in the past or stories about continuity.
Yeah.
Unless it makes sense for a larger story that I'm telling. So right now I have ideas. Like, I have some thoughts about Zordon, but I don't have a story yet where I go, oh yeah, no, we need to go back and see this and dive into this stuff. That's not to say that I won't, but right now, like, I'm juggling some other plates that I think in the next few months it'll become clearer where my attention has been. So, but never say never is, I guess, how I would answer that.
Sure.
Yeah. So on Facebook, we got quite a few questions from RJ. His first one, which I'm not sure I quite understand, is why so fly?
I think that's a good thing, right?
I guess. Yeah, I guess it's a compliment.
I'm going to choose, based on the last couple weeks I've had, I'm going to choose to take that as a compliment. Yes.
Good choice.
Thank you, RJ. It is very nice to feel loved and appreciated.
There you go.
That's what I'm going to go with.
He asked who designed Trinity's super cute outfit. I'm going to assume that was Hendry.
It was Hendry, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I'm just imagining you, Kyle, picking out clothes at the shops and sending them little snapshots.
No, I'm not that... look, I'm obsessive as a writer, but I'm not that obsessive.
He asked, are we going to see any more of the Rangers' parents? And he specifically says that seeing more of Jason's home life at the annual was really cool.
Yeah, we'll definitely see more of the parents, yeah. The stuff in the annual and the stuff, the little cutaway scene here of Tommy's mom, like, that's stuff that I really like and I want to get into more, because it's like classic kind of superhero storytelling stuff. It's like Peter Parker juggling his home life with the superhero life, and that juxtaposition and that kind of dichotomy is what makes great and resonant superhero stories. So we'll definitely be diving more into Rangers' home lives. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. One of RJ's last questions was, is Zach going to get to do anything other than yell and be grumpy? Which I feel is probably an oversimplification. But yeah, so plans for Zach.
No, I mean, actually, that's the only thing that I have is like my go-to move is, well, Zach, grumpy, yelling. Like that's my panel description for him. Yeah, no, we got some stuff for Zach. We've got some stuff for all of them coming up. Like, that's, like I said, I'm juggling a big cast of characters and trying to create moments for all of them. And I think Zach's had some good ones, but I've got some cool stuff for him coming up. So
awesome, something to look forward to. Josh asks, are we going to get more development from Zordon? As much as he talks about Good Always winning, it's 10,000 years later and Rita's walking around and he isn't. That can't sit well with him.
That's a great point. Yeah. Zordon's kind of the last of the cast that I haven't done anything with, really. That's one I wish I don't know what I would necessarily do differently based on the story that we have. But there were probably ways and opportunities to do more with him in the first couple issues, so that when I took him off the table here at the end of issue 4, it resonates a bit more. Mm-hmm. But again, there's a big cast, and he always kind of felt like I know who this guy is, or this entity is. I'm gonna do something with him. It's just not yet. So
awesome. Robert was the one who asked about it always going to be Billy staying behind. That was a yes. I feel like I kind of know the answer to this one, but how did Rita ever get a hold of the green power coin or the Sword of Darkness? Is that something?
Great question.
Yeah. that feels like
that's a great question. It does. It's not something. Again, it's let me put it this way: if I have a story coming up where there's an opportunity to put something like that in, I would do it because I think that that is a cool, oh, holy cow, could be a really cool throwback, callback. Yeah. But predicated on what the story is, and I don't have a spot for that or an idea for that yet. Mm-hmm. But again, the way that I build stuff, I'm pretty open to ideas as on the fly,
Absolutely.
Now, one last question. Jesse asked, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Yeah, that was easy.
There you go.
As a kid, it was red, but I think it was always actually blue. But I liked Raphael the best, and so I convinced myself that red was my favorite color. But it's not. It's blue. It's more like Robin's egg blue.
Yeah, I mean, Raphael had that effect on many children. I'm quite sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that is it for our questions. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, listeners, the trade, if you've been waiting for that, is out this week. Mm-hmm. So is Hadrian's Wall issue 1, and just buy it. Come on, it's Kyle. You guys like Kyle. It's great. Is there anything else you have to plug at the moment, Kyle?
No, I think that's about it. Yeah, I'm working on scripts for... I just wrote issue 10, but I wrote it ahead of issue 9, so now I have to write issue 9. And then we get into some really cool, different stuff that I'm not going to say anything about.
Awesome. All right, well, I think that's a pretty effective tease for next time.
Yeah.
And we'll know more about that when we catch up with you next month.
All right, sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for being on, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, take care.